So joining the program now to talk about policy and taxes and debt ceiling in D.C. is Brandon Arnold. Brandon is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union. Brandon, welcome to WBAL.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So listen, I'm going to ask you this. So Republicans have made public their debt ceiling plan. Can you give us the highs and the lows?
Yeah, I think overall, let me just say this is a very good plan. And it's really necessary that we pass this to move to the next stage of negotiation. But the highlights of the plan, I think, are capping spending based on 2022 levels. You know, you think 2022 wasn't that long ago in terms of fiscal years. That was just 4 years ago. So it's not like we're moving back to spending levels of the 1960s or anything. It's not as dramatic as some who are opposed to this plan, Democrats, are claiming. It's reclaiming these unspent COVID funds. There's tens of billions of dollars floating around there still that we haven't spent, that we haven't obligated. It's time to apply those to deficit reduction instead of letting them linger in government coffers, repealing that huge IRS expansion that the Democrats passed last year, or at least the bulk of that, getting about $71 billion in savings, and ending that student loan giveaway that is caught up in the courts but could put taxpayers on the hook for nearly $500 billion to pay off the loans of people who have gone to college or pursued higher education degrees. So those are just some of the highlights. I think all very strong components of a plan. And of course, not all of these are going to make it across the finish line, but we need to get at least a few of these measures signed into law in exchange for increasing that debt ceiling.
So looks like next week they'll schedule a vote. What's the timeline?
Yeah, they're going to schedule the vote whenever they have the numbers to get this.
That's right. It's been a while since I worked for a member. I used to work for a member of Congress, and you're right. Votes are scheduled when the votes are there. I remember, Brandon, I was during 2003, the Medicare Modernization Act, and the controversy was, we went to the vote, and we might have pulled the trigger too early because we left that vote open. Trying to get members to the floor to vote. So maybe next week. All right, so it's voted on in the House, and then what?
Well, it's voted on in the House, and then it goes to the next phase of negotiations, and it remains to be seen exactly what those are. But of course, if the House can't even pass their own plan, then they have zero leverage, absolutely no leverage. So if this thing dies on the floor of the House of Representatives, then I don't think it will. I think it will get passed. But if it dies, then we're talking about a clean debt ceiling increase. No question about it. So this has to pass to move to that next phase. It's got to show Schumer. It's got to show Biden that indeed there is a Republican plan and there is a need to negotiate to move to that next phase.
Now, I know you're a policy guy. We're talking with Brandon Arnold. He's the Executive Vice President over at NTU, the National Taxpayers Union. You're a policy guy. You're not a public relations guy. But I have to ask you this question. The playing field is already against Republicans in terms of the media, in terms of public relations, and they have academia, they have the media, they have Hollywood, they have corporate America even, but still, the Republicans can't get out of the way of just gaffe after gaffe when it comes to explaining what they want to do. Who are the best spokesperson, that Kevin McCarthy can lean on to help sell this plan to the American people?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question and a tough one to answer because I don't think, unfortunately, we have as good messengers in the Republican Party as we used to. These are complicated issues. People aren't accustomed to dealing with a debt ceiling or some of these technical programs that we're trying to modify, like some of the income support programs like TANF that certainly need stronger work requirements to function better, to increase the labor participation rate and get the economy going. But I mean, I think people like Steve Scalise, the majority leader, have done a fantastic job articulating some of these viewpoints. We have a lot of kind of a new bench of talent. The Ways and Means chair, who's just elected at the beginning of the year to serve in that capacity, Jason Smith of Missouri, I think he has a very high ceiling. I think we have some younger folks like Byron Donalds of Florida has gotten a lot of attention. He's a young African-American guy, really, really smart guy. I've had a chance to to meet him personally on a few occasions and been just very, very impressed. So I think there are some both kind of more of the longstanding members as well as a new crop of folks who could be good messengers on this. I don't think we're ever going to change the playing field so much.
You're right.
The New York Times isn't going away anytime soon. MSNBC's along.
Well, that's
here to stay.
And Brandon, that's why, frankly, the groups like NTU, National Taxpayers Union, and Citizens Against Government Waste, and the Manhattan Institute, and AEI, and Heritage. Heritage had their big 50th anniversary last week. They had Ron DeSantis in to give a keynote. Based upon Ron DeSantis being in D.C. last week, of the presidential candidates, do you expect a Ron DeSantis or a Donald Trump or any of the others, Tim Scott, to say something about the debt ceiling?
I hope so. I think right now what we've seen from these candidates is more personal attacks and culture of war kind of engagements. DeSantis going after Disney time and time again, which I think is a little bit silly if I'm being frank. And Trump seems to be focused mostly on Ron DeSantis more than it is about policy. I really think Americans need a positive vision, and I think that positive vision comes from Republican policy. So I think they ought to be talking about not just getting the debt ceiling issue resolved, but why that's important for everyday Americans, why we need to balance our budget or move in the direction of a balanced budget in order to make sure our children, our grandchildren, and beyond have a fiscally sustainable government here in this country, that we have the policies in place to make sure that those folks have jobs, that they can go to college, that they can live the American dream, purchase a house. Right now, we're just on such a reckless trajectory, and there's zero opportunity to improve it, except for instances like this, which may fall by the wayside if we end up bungling it.
Well, let me ask you this last question, and we're talking with Brandon Arnold. I almost said Brandon Scott. He's the mayor of Baltimore City. Brandon Arnold from the National Taxpayers Union, NTU. If we do nothing, right, we know that we'll stay on this bad fiscal path. But Republicans seem to care about the fiscal house when Democrats are in power. What credibility do they have? Does the GOP have now after, again, right, they've been in the majority, Paul Ryan, and before that, Denny Hastert and that sort of thing. Republicans like to spend. So why all of a sudden the discipline?
Oh, you're absolutely right. The discipline often comes from partisanship, unfortunately. Yes. And, Republicans increased the debt ceiling in 2019.
Yeah.
And then we fought it in 2021 when Biden was in charge. It's this partisanship that I think really undermines the case. The case shouldn't be let's cut spending because Democrats are doing it. Right. The case should be let's cut spending because we need to move toward a balanced budget to help our kids and grandchildren. Yeah. And we lose that message sometimes when we get gavels in our hands, we get power in Washington, and that's really unfortunate.
Brandon Arnold, NTU, thank you so much. We'll have you back on again, talk about economics, policy.